Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. I'm Isaiah Bo, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, Nurse Kalli.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for watching. Welcome to Empower the Pulse.
Today, we are here with our special guest. He's my brother fireman. He's also not just a fireman, but he plays a very important role for our community. He is involved in the rescue efforts and education of human trafficking.
Thanks for the introduction. My name's Matt. I work with Las Vegas Fire. I've been on with Las Vegas Fire now for 14 years. In 2018, we had a training in Las Vegas on child exploitation, human trafficking, where we were able to train all of Las Vegas Fire, all of North Las Vegas Fire, and multiple other agencies on top of the World Market Center over 6 days. In that time, we were able to train over 1,000 people, which I think to date is the largest training that's ever taken place on training people how to identify victims of child exploitation or human trafficking. And I continue that work today.
Right on, man. I was talking with Nurse Kalli, and one of the first things we want to do before we begin this podcast is I just want you to know that what we feel and how proud we are of you.
Yeah.
And not only your dedication to your community as being a firefighter, and that already takes such demand and sacrifice, working 48 hours, being pulled away from your family, but you still give more. You still give more to your community, and I mean, you are a very special man that God has put on this earth to truly make a difference, man. And you make Las Vegas Fire Rescue proud. You make the whole valley proud, and you make all first responders. You are an example to follow, my man.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you.
I mean,
man, that was,
I'm proud.
thank you.
I want the audience who's going to be watching this, they need to understand that the man who's sitting at this table is you have gone an extra mile is not even the proper word. So, but thank you, man, for your dedication.
No, man, I appreciate that. That's quite the interview or the introduction. I apologize, but man, that's very humbling, and it's good to be recognized every once in a while for that stuff, and especially by other men. Women, they're very, they can give that.
Better complimenting?
Yeah, they can give that compliment very easy, and for that to come from another man is it's a harder thing to have happen. So thank you for that, man.
Before we move on, we will be discussing the movie Sound of Freedom, but when God asks of you, you respond, and as firemen, that's what we do. Tones go off, we respond, and we make sure that we are there for our community. This podcast was not supposed to happen at this time. Initially, I assume here I'll be a certified trauma recovery coach. And not only do I want to help my community on the front line, but off of the front line. I will soon be launching my little business called Frontline Trauma Coaching. And I truly do believe that people that are out there suffering in this community and communities, let's just think about all the different forms of trauma, for instance, that are impacting not just Las Vegas, this nation, but the world. But you have mental illness on the rise. You have drugs just flowing to this country. And if you have not done your research on fentanyl, please, this drug is devastating our people. Broken families, divorces, and not just to speak on these issues of mental illness and addiction, but look at how divided our country has become. But this podcast, it's okay if you don't believe. I am here to serve, but this podcast is all about God. And we believe everything we say, everything that we do, our mission is all glory to God. But like I said, it's okay if you don't believe. I'm not here to judge. I accept people for what they are, what they believe. But our mission is to really get people to come together, to shine a light on human trafficking. You got to understand that, man, this is an evil. This is it's just something that's undescribable when you run on a call on someone who's been a victim of human trafficking, like we've seen, that fear in their eyes we were just talking about before we started, the fear, the trauma, the devastation, it's unacceptable. This is something that needs to come to a stop. And that's what we're trying to do today. Empower the Pulse, we're here to bring light to the situation and help people. We come from a place of humility, compassion. And I just want my audience to know that we're 2 firemen and a nurse, and there's going to be some things that are going to be hard to hear in this podcast. And it's not easy for me to say these things, but this is the reality, that the things that we see, the things that we have to do here, but we're going to keep it real. And if you see me get fired up, passionate, hey, I'm a fireman, and I'll tell you what, you're going to want someone showing up to your house, wherever it is may be, when you're having your worst emergency, worst time in your life, and someone who's dedicated. So enough said, but let's move on to the movie Sound of Freedom. Or I'm sorry, Nurse Kalli, go ahead and introduce yourself. My bad.
Oh, I'm Kalli. I'm an emergency nurse. Currently working at 2 different locations here in Vegas. Doing it for about 7 years. Not all in the ER, but a little bit of critical care. And I'm really happy to be here. I do feel like there's more I can give and do for the community outside of the emergency department. And I just feel blessed to be here, really.
I'm blessed to have you.
Thanks.
So your community too is so much better with you on the front line. And I've personally seen you working, as you know, I transport, and you didn't know I'd be watching. But, I was watching.
I'd be watching.
You want to see what is this person all about? They all talk all nice and kind of, in person. What are they like? But from all your coworkers, they have nothing but love for you, and even in the most difficult of patients, you still somehow maintain your cool.
I try.
But your faith is in with God as well, and it shows through your care.
Thanks.
So,
Thank you.
but let's go ahead and move on to the Sound of Freedom. We're going to discuss the movie Sound of Freedom. Matt is going to discuss his involvement with a rescue organization called iEmpathize. But our whole goal today is to bring awareness and bring light into a deep, deep darkness. And hopefully we can inspire change, whether it's a small contribution like donating to actually getting involved. Okay, we're not trying to pressure anybody to do anything. If you're not ready, that's okay. But for the people who are ready to respond, if you feel there's a calling, then let's go. People need help now. So, Sound of Freedom. Go ahead. Share your. What did you feel? What did you learn? What did you experience?
A lot of emotions, for sure. Truth be told, I don't think I've cried, and this is me holding back because I was at the movie theater.
Yep.
People sitting next to me, which initially I was like, how in the world can I sit here and eat popcorn? Like, they literally went for seconds to people sitting next to me. But everybody have their vice, everybody perhaps deal with trauma differently.
Yeah.
I think that was just a distraction in the beginning. So I was trying
On that note, we got popcorn, and that's the first time we ever left with basically a whole thing full of popcorn. I couldn't eat. I lost my appetite.
Actually, so I hadn't planned on seeing the movie at that time. I literally woke up and it was like, you know what, we got to go see it. And I got ready really quickly, probably quicker than ever before. We made it within the hour. And so I kind of woke up, hadn't had my food or coffee, I believe. And I didn't really mentally prepare. I had an idea, right?
Yeah.
But I did not mentally or emotionally prepare. And I don't know if I've ever bawled that much even in real life, to be honest. And I am a movie crier. But Yeah, I usually cry in movies, but that took more than a day to recover from, I will say. Mixed feelings. Obviously, knowing it was based off a real story was breaking my heart at seeing everything unfolding. But then I think the moments I really just wanted to let it all out, was when I was thinking about all the children that are still out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that messed with me the most, like the ones that are
Absolutely.
not being saved.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I feel like I didn't get ready mentally before I went in that too. I was just like, we got to go. Like, I got to get my family there. My daughter was unable to join us, sadly, but I will take her and go see it later. But it is one of those movies that, like, maybe you should do a little bit of mental prep before you go in there, because it hit me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah.
And this is my realm, right? Like,
Right.
this is where I do my work. And
I remember, like, after the movie was done, it was this long line to the restroom, and I was like, oh, I know I looked like a mess. So, everybody,
yeah.
you don't even know who was in the movie, who was watching, I don't know, something else next door. Well, luckily I didn't have mascara on that day, but, and I was standing in line, and this lady next to me, she's like, oh, you must have seen Sound of Freedom. I was like, yep, I can tell you too, huh? And she's like, yeah, I waited 3 years. She waited 3 years to watch this movie.
Insane.
Yeah. I mean, I knew from before that it was taking about 5 years to finally get it out there, but yeah, that was a lot to process.
Yeah.
Still is.
For me, what an impact. Watching that movie, I went through a mix of emotions.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know me, I'm a passionate person, and when I'm mad or upset, I'm not going to be punching trees like some people do and breaking hands and crazy stuff like that. But that energy is coming, and you're going to see it. And I feel this movie was absolutely valid for that. To see these men just celebrating the fact that they're doing this to little children. That one scene in the movie, a little kid was in I don't know if it was a hotel room or something, but
Yeah.
that old man walks in with the alcohol,
Mm-hmm.
shuts the door, and then closes the blinds. And for those of you who are not first responders, I've been doing this for 15 years, and when you see so much, I don't know what the fucked up shit, in a sense, what people go through. I'm not, whether it's gunshots, stabbings, the vehicle accidents, cardiac arrest, to little children going through, I'm not going to get into detail, but we had a drowning of a small child. And so when you see these things happen in movies, you can play that video in your head. And I'm a protector. My father raised me that way. He raised me to be a good man. I'm thankful for my parents. And so watching that, you just want to, beat that person. All those people, you want to cause them harm. How could you not?
Well, I think you're taking, like innocence,
right,
and just crushing it. Yeah. And when you take a child's innocence like that, it's there. Like you were talking about how angry you were when you left, and I was actually your outlet. You called me, dude. I'm ready to just kill someone right now, and I'm like, I get it, yeah. I get it. And like for me, it was when I was in Thailand, when I was serving in the Navy. I'm walking down the street, and I see grown men that, well, I was 22 back then, but look like me now, and older, up to 60, 70, holding a little Thai boy's hand walking down the street. And I'm naive, and I said, what's this? And one of the guys I'm walking with goes, you don't know what that is? And I go, no. And he says, that guy is going to go have sex with that child. Had I known what I know now, I'd have said, no, he's not going to go have sex with that child. He's going to go rape that child. Right. And that's not okay. Mm-hmm. Right. And so, fast forward a bunch of years, I think it was 15 years, and I'm in Colorado, and I meet a guy, Mark Brendy, who is is teaching a class. He's not teaching a class. I'm at a men's retreat, and they had a poker tournament, and he got up and spoke about iEmpathize. And I got up and I said, "Are you guys in Las Vegas?" He said, "No." I said, "You will be." And that was it for me. It was he talked about it. I was instantly back in Thailand, and I said, that's my calling. I have to do something. So,
And
Thank you for
I'll
doing
tell you
that.
what, you know, for those who have not seen this movie, if you can't, please go watch it.
Yes.
It's understandable that this is so traumatic. There's many people out there who just can't. One thing that I have really been learning through this trauma program is that the molestation and rape, verbal, physical abuse to a lot of these women in this organization, and even some of the men, but there's majority of our women, and for them to share their experiences and their stories of these tragic times, you know, it's just really opened my eyes, and you know, I feel their pain, you know, and I wish I could take it away. I wish I could save all these kids, you know. I am grateful for men like Tim Ballard and all his brave men.
who also cried, Tim
Yeah.
Ballard. So there's that.
That's
That's exactly my point. That's exactly it.
Reaches Tim Ballard, you know, you will be sitting next to God on that high throne.
100%.
100%, sir. So thank you and all your teams, all the boots on the ground. We're going to be talking a little bit about the trauma.
But real quick, what you just pointed out is like true empathy, right? Is like you put yourself in their shoes. You can feel the pain. You can understand the trauma that they're going through, and you want to fix that, right? So that's like the complete difference between apathy and empathy, right? So it's always good to touch on those, right? Sympathy is like, I feel bad for you, but I'm not going to walk in your shoes. I'm not going to walk alongside you. Empathy is like truly walking alongside someone or trying to find a solution for the plight that they're in, right? So you did a great job of pointing that out, and I think that we just need to recognize that, you know what I mean? Apathy is obviously just disregarding whatever anybody's going through and just carrying on and well, man, that sucks, and away you go. And you know, this table is about empathy, and that's actually what it's the recipe to fix, you know, the things that are happening in this world where we talked about true evil. This is pure evil. That's all there is to it, and there's no question about it. When you take the innocence from a child, that's evil, and there's no other way to put it.
And I think, I was just going to say, and I think as we've discussed this before, I think it has a lot to do with simply maybe not knowing or understanding the magnitude of what's really going on in this world. I personally have been guilty of it as a nurse, and I'm learning that more and more now. But yes, you are going to have people that just simply don't give a shit.
Right.
And hey, that's their vice, you know. But I think, I mean, I would like to think that the majority of people just simply don't know, you know, on how bad it truly is.
Right.
So,
walking out of that theater, I was twisted, you know, and you know, for those of you who don't know who Jocko Willink is and have not read his book Extreme Ownership, if you are aspiring to be a leader, this is a must read, you know.
100%.
yeah.
And so, you know what? Before you both and my audience, you know, I felt like even though I'm a fireman, I've been dedicated for 15 years, and you talk to anybody that I work with, you know, we're in those trenches together, my brothers and sisters. You know, we even work together, and you know, we're there. You know, we're doing it. You know, but I felt I had failed my community, and that was a terrible feeling. You know, we swore an oath to protect our people, and I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm just telling people how I felt and why I want to get involved. I have not done any type of rescuing. I'm just learning. But like I was saying, when God puts something on your heart, you respond and act. And this is what this podcast is a little change in direction from what I'm planning on doing with the Power of the Pulse. But this is priority, because every day that is not talked about, is not liked, and I just think about all the distractions.
Yeah.
That was the most frustrating part. You're saying people don't give a shit or just don't know, and I know most people out there are good people, right? They just want to be with their families, go to their jobs, come home, be happy with their kids and everything. And what an amazing blessing that is, But I don't even have kids. But the fact that this just, I felt so small. Mm-hmm. And I almost felt like, man, what have I been doing? And so here we are, we're taking action. And, here we're going to move on to exactly what iEmpathize, everything that you're doing, going to educate and everything. But, damn.
Yeah.
We can go on and on about this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, you're pointing out the fact that, you're taking steps now, right? And that's called like spiritual maturity, right? Just realizing that something needs to be done. And, we could go to work and continue status quo and, expect something different, even though we keep doing the same thing over and over and over. And it's our attitude that has to start first, right? If we don't change our attitude out the gate, then nothing's ever going to change. If we're on scene and we're just like, why are we here again? How can I actually bring light to this person's life with a smile? Well, we actually came up with a mnemonic at iEmpathize. It's called PAVE, which is posture, attitude, verbiage, and empathy, right? So if you check your posture before you go in, 85%, 90% of communication is done through your body, through your facial expression. Mm-hmm. It's not even your words, right? So if you check your posture before you go in, that's one way you could do it. Check your attitude before you go in, right? I mean, I'm guilty, right? Yeah. As a paramedic that worked at Station 1 for 9 years total, right? It's draining, and there was times where you just get smacked in the face with a little bit of humble pie. So check your attitude, the verbiage, the words that you use, the way you speak to these people, along with your attitude, and then, like I said before, the number one thing here to bring light into a dark place is empathy. Like, it's not sympathy. It's not like, oh man, I feel so bad for you. No, actually, like, envision yourself in their shoes. Envision yourself in their situation. And if you can do that for like the first 20 to 30 seconds of a call, every single call, then maybe you could actually, one, identify a victim of human trafficking, because they're going to read your body language and they're going to see, holy cow, this guy actually cares, or this girl actually cares. And if they don't see that, then you'll never see them. They will ghost. They'll just be like a ghost. You'll never see them, or you'll see them and you'll identify it because you've been trained, but you'll never break that barrier because they read you right when you walked in that door. That door will frame you, your whole body, right? And that's a snapshot for them. What do they look like in that door? What's their face look like? What's their posture? Yep. So you could literally pave a path to freedom just by doing, remembering PAVE before you walk in any call.
It's pretty powerful. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Yeah.
For those please don't know, Station 1, busy house, like we said.
That's why I look like I'm 700.
Oh, whatever.
To all the firemen out there. 2 engines, ladder truck, 3 rescues, battalion chief, 20 people out of this house. Busy house. In an area that potentially is a very high volume for potential trafficking. So
yeah, sure.
And we're actually going to discuss, as far as potential some of these victims that are being missed.
Right.
But anyways, hey, thank you for sharing that. Man,
well, real quick, potential victims, right? Like, so we have Fremont Street right there in downtown by Station 1. And what you'll see there is, you'll see escorts, or you can definitely identify them, right? Sitting on the bumper. And as people walk by, you can go, okay, that's one, that's one. And what people don't really recognize here in Las Vegas is that 99% of escorts or prostitutes, 99% of them have a trafficker. Only 1% are actually working on their own. So it's pretty wild. Like, and what does that mean? That they're being exploited, that they're being coerced. So they go out and they do their work, and at the end of the day, that means they don't get to keep their money. Their money goes to someone else. And that's the difference between a prostitute who works for themselves or a trafficking victim. Are you being force, fraud, or coercion? One of those three things is being used on those people. And so we have to remember that. And then force, fraud, coercion, and let's just add trauma in there, right? Because and that's the big one, right? And is it physical trauma? Is it mental trauma? It could be both. Guaranteed it's probably at least mental, right?
And emotional.
Yeah, at a minimum. Exactly.
To get over. But you did touch on something. So for me, I've heard of the work you do probably like about a year ago from you. ENF Freedom. So some of these organizations that do work with human trafficking, and I think that kind of sparked a little bit in me to be more attentive. I was telling you earlier, doing LMS work for work, right? We have to do all this education stuff. We tend to skip through them because we're just trying to get them done on time while working, and most of the time. I think the last time I had to deal with the human trafficking was part of it, and I actually paid closer attention this time. And I don't remember the exact number, but what blew my mind was the high percentage of victims of human trafficking we actually miss in the healthcare system, especially emergency departments. And I think that's what really hit me hard personally. I felt guilty. I still feel guilty, and I feel like I have so much more to learn. And then watching Sound of Freedom totally got me for that specific reason. So I'm curious to hear you kind of talk about what we can do on our end, obviously off camera as well. I would love to learn more that I can teach others, perhaps.
Sure.
But I think I'm kind of scared at the same time to realize how many I might have missed.
Well, that's a great point. That's a fantastic point. Like I spoke to you earlier, we went to Denver Fire, and we spoke to, I think there was 10 or 12 guys that we were training that day. And the first question I asked them was, who believes they've had a human trafficking victim in their care while at work? Not one hand went up. And I'm like, wow, that's impressive, because I know where we're at, because I'm from Colorado, and we were in the hub of it, right? And 45 minutes later, after the training, I asked the same question. Who believes they've had a human trafficking victim in their care now? Every hand shot up. It wasn't like maybe. It was a solid yes. And not only that, like I was watching the table that they were all sitting at, and they were all looking down at their hands, counting how many victims they lost. And then they would look up, and you would see them kind of give you that eye, and you're like, and they're like counting, So that's the great thing about this, like what we're doing, right, is that we can get products into people's hands to where in a short 45 minutes, hopefully, 45 minutes is how long the training takes. And then, we encourage doing it in a group setting so people can talk. A lot of times there's like a bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Stigma to this type of call, right? So people either don't want to ask questions or don't want to actually, and then they'll come up to you afterwards, and you're like, man, that would have been a great question. Why don't you just ask it when, So for future people that do go through this, have that group discussion, because a lot of stuff will be covered, and there is no dumb question in this, because these patients, if you aren't trained, they will literally run circles around you. Because even, before I was trained, there was a couple calls that I had where I didn't know what the heck happened. And I got back in the rescue, and I'm getting ready to write my report, and I'm like, what do I write here? I have no idea what to write. This girl just ran circles around me. She was probably 17 or 18, and she ran circles around me. She made me look like I didn't even know what I was doing. So once you do get trained, it definitely makes it easier, but they're trained. You still need to keep your suspicions about you, and that's really the only way to identify these.
Well, I would imagine too, speaking on training, is we're getting trained, different agencies that you're speaking to, and I really do hope that this message and all the other messages that the people who are involved in rescue efforts, that just reaches as many people as possible.
Yeah.
But we also got to understand too that when we get trained, so do traffickers. Just
100%.
like technology, things get more advanced. They're
Sure.
getting smarter and figuring out, just like drugs, you know, with all these drug traffickers. And by the way, I believe now, right, human trafficking, the sex trade or sex trafficking has surpassed the drug trade valuation, or is coming close. I'm not too sure.
I believe,
It's on the movie.
yeah, I believe it's still number 2. I think it's the fastest growing, but it's still the second, like criminal enterprise, or I don't even know how to say that, but
So it's something to stay on top of, you know, as we evolve, but hey, we got to stay one step ahead somehow.
Yeah.
I mean, Sound of Freedom, right? Freedom's in the name of that movie, and we're talking about more slaves today than there ever have been on this planet. And it's like, you know, we look back over history, and you have so many people that are like, slavery, it was so bad, but then everybody turns a blind eye to the amount of slaves that we have today.
Right.
10 million slaves. And of those 10 million, I believe in the Sound of Freedom, they said 2 million are children. 2 million children that are slaves. And it's like, well, 2 million around the world, that's pretty spread out. Well, it's in your community. It's not that spread out. It's in every single major city in America, guaranteed. There's no question about it.
Right.
Las Vegas is, we went from, like, before COVID, this is kind of weird and I don't know why it happened, but pre-COVID we were like number 10 in the nation. Post-COVID we're number 2. And that's based on calls made to the National Human Trafficking Hotline.
Oh, I see.
And that's another thing that first responders can do. Once you get trained and you can identify this, you can make a call on behalf of that patient that you find, right? So there's many things that we can do. First thing is being trained, because if you're not, then
Being
like
aware,
I said,
situational awareness, I would assume, is key.
absolutely.
Just like the research I've been looking into, I've had anything from like 68% up to 88% of people who are victim of human trafficking have been through emergency department somewhere in this country. I was reading an article, I think it was The Cut, where this nurse had noticed this patient who would come in on a regular basis for very similar symptoms like STD checks and had come in with someone, I think it was, I'm assuming a minor or a teenager of some sort, and when they were trying to discharge, it would be like, I'm suicidal, because that gives you a legal hold, right, to stay in the hospital. And one day she just figured, you know what, it got to be something more to the story. And come to find out, this patient was being trafficked. And that created a whole system of education in this Methodist, I don't remember the exact name, it's somewhere in Houston, Texas, where they are now identifying at least 9 victims a month on average.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So it just goes to show how much education in itself, how much of a change that can make. So hopefully this will do the same. Not more.
It's all our prayers.
Yeah.
You know, I think what you're doing is amazing. So can you tell us a little bit more about iEmpathize?
Yeah. So iEmpathize is basically an organization that trains, right? We're not the Operation Underground Railroad that's going out there and doing like literally God's work, right? That is God's work when you go into another place and snatch kids up and get them back to their own family. Like, what a blessing those guys are to this world. But we do a little bit different, right? Our goal is to teach and train. First responders, we've built a training for the service industry. We have one for schools, so children can be trained on how to identify potential traffickers. What else? Oh, the way that they basically got started, iEmpathize, is Truckers Against Trafficking. They helped build the training for that, and they've trained over 1 million truckers on the road.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
so after that training, they became the #1 reporter, right?
Wow.
So,
How cool.
so we know that it works, right? We know that the trainings that we do, the cool thing about it is it's not PowerPoint. It's not death by PowerPoint. You know, Isaiah, you went through the training. It's video based. It takes about 45 minutes to go through. There's a couple slides in there, like red flags and great questions that you can ask a potential victim. But you know, you went through the training, and what'd you think about it?
Man, I was sitting there, definitely not as pissed off after the movie.
Yeah, sure.
You know, but still, even just the movie, and then I forget who the woman was that was speaking in that. But just you could see her pain, and then.
But yeah.
And you know, I walked up to you after, you know, and I was like, how do I get involved? And like I want to do something, and that's why I went and got all to do this podcast.
Let me just cut in. That was January. We're in July.
Right.
And you and Kalli have been burning the midnight oil since that day. So this is exactly what, you know, the kind of dedication, the kind of passion that is needed to fight something like this. So it's been nothing but a great journey, you know, since that day, you know, and I appreciate all the work that you put in. And now you have a podcast, and we're highlighting what iEmpathize does. And how cool is that?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And so I'm going to try to make this story quick because I value our audience's time. But so after that training, I was getting ready to go into work. This is the night before, and you sent me an interview that has to do with human trafficking. And these individuals are talking about how they go into Colombia and they rescued 105 kids. And during this transaction, because you have to have undercover people who know business. It was Paul Hutchison.
Yep.
Paul Hutchison.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, being undercover, you making these transactions. And I hate using that word, you know, but it is what it is, I guess, right? And in a token of good faith for good business, here's I think it was a 6-year-old little boy, virgin.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there like, you know, I'm not going to say, because of, you know, there's any, but I was.
Choice words.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%.
You know, and then he goes on to talk about Haiti, I think it is, and how they're undercover walking in with a female trafficker through this there was no windows, they walk in, that there's dirt floors, these kids are in cages, and he looks into one cage or in one and
cell.
he sees this cell, there
yeah.
we go. And see this little girl looking at him just in fear. So he hits the button, the teams move in, take down the traffickers, but he goes up to this little girl, and he picks her up, and she's like, you know, you're the first man in 6 years who hasn't come to rape me. And I just heard that, and you know, so I start praying, and I did one of my first videos I put out for people to hear. I start praying to God, and I say, God, you know, this evil, and please use me. You know, here I am, wanting to get involved. You know, show me what I can do. You know, guide me. And if you don't use me, then shame on you. Straight up. I think I even called you.
It definitely told me.
You know, I was,
Yeah.
You know,
I remember that.
But hey, like I said, I'm passionate. You know,
And God showed him. God certainly showed him.
That's
Yeah.
all it is. You know, I care. I care about people. I love to see people happy. That's the most beautiful thing is family and connection, right?
Yeah.
So next day, I'm at work, and at my station, we got 10 of us, and the captains give their muster, the plan for the day, and right after muster, it's like 8 o'clock in the morning. We start our shifts at 7:30, and the doorbell rings, and one of our guys goes, gets the door, and in comes this man. He's wearing some type of, it looked like a tactical outfit, you know, I'm not sure if he was police or what the heck this guy was. And he was like, "Hey guys, I hope you're doing good. Sorry to interrupt. I was just wondering if we could trade station patches." He said he was a volunteer or some type of first responder work, so one of the guys like, "Hey, what are you doing here? Like, are you a police, security, or what?" He's like, "Well, actually, we flew into Las Vegas. We've been rescuing kids the whole week, and we're just down the street. I just wanted to stop in real quick." And when he said that, man, I about fell out of my chair. I was like, "What?"
I didn't even believe him when he called me and told me about this.
Yeah, I'm sitting there and I'm like what I'm doing right now, like stumbling, like, So I get up and I follow this man, and I'm like, "Sir, what are you doing? Who are you?" And he goes, "Tell me," and he says, "Yeah, I'm with so and so, or this organization, and we're just down the street rescuing kids." I'm like, "Sir, this is something I want to get involved in." And he's like, "Can I get you?" I asked, "Can I get your card?" And he's like, "Why don't you just come down? We're down the street." My captain, thank you, if you ever do listen to this, for allowing one of the guys and myself to go. So we drive to this house, and we walk in, and there's 20 to 30 people from all over the country that flew into Las Vegas. And for those of you who hear this message, God bless you. So I'm sitting there, and they're all going around saying, "Tell us about that one." It was either the ones that they found, but what they were in the conditions they found them in. One girl was being raped, they said, by 5 men standing around her, to ones missing, to ones they're trying to get more intel. And so I'm just sitting there listening to this, and just like, wow, like this is just down the street. And so then we go into a briefing room, and the man leading this is an ex-Navy SEAL, from what I was told. I hope I'm not wrong, but man, you could see the passion in this man's eyes. This man was dedicated, stone cold dedicated. Something like when you see a bad dude, like somebody, a sea fighter or something, I'd imagine, or a special ops, just someone's been in combat. I'd imagine they have this look, this hardened look, and this man had it. And we go into this room for the briefing as the teams are getting ready to go out, and I look up on the wall, and there's all these pictures of these kids that they were talking about, missing, found, and but they were business. They put their anger, their emotions to the side because they had a job to get done, and that's rescuing these kids. And so then the chief, whoever the man running it, sitting at the head table, Alpha team, Bravo team, Charlie team. Okay, hey, let's go out, let's get this done. And they end up saving, I believe, 21 children here in Vegas.
In the course of a weekend, right?
I think it was a weekend or up to a week.
Okay.
Right. And so I don't know if these organizations want me to really say who they are and the individuals. So I'm going to keep that privacy. But so that was the day that I started communicating, and I'll be working with organizations here locally.
Well, I mean, I like the biggest point that you failed to point out in that whole thing is that you had this great conversation with God, and he like literally responded like that. Absolutely. I mean, obviously, being a Christian, that's rare, right? For God to respond like that. But you said, if shame on you if you don't, and he said, all right, prove it. It was like, dude, it's
when
not.
He called me. I was like, wait, what? Are you making this story up right now?
I don't know. This is not coincidence. And this is why my faith was restored. Because for those of you who don't believe out there, I understand why. When you do this job and your faith isn't strong, and like I said, it's okay if you believe, you see such tragedies that people go through. It's like, how can there be a God? And we're not going to get into discussion,
right.
of that. But you know what? For me, I hope if it offends you or whatever, all you got to know about myself is that I care. It doesn't matter what hour of the night, whatever you're going through, 911 is called. you're getting taken care of.
Right.
That's all that should matter. Just like all that should matter is the efforts into rescuing these children. But anyways, with that being said, real quick too, I want to touch on the trauma. You know, all three of us have seen trauma.
Yeah.
You know, I imagine we all have a call that sticks in our head. You know,
Oh, yeah.
there's several, right? And as we know, mental illness is devastating the first responder world. But our general population as well. But I want the people watching to, and I would like each of you to kind of maybe just touch on your own kind of what your version of what these children are going through, trauma. But you understand, those listening, that when these kids are rescued, okay, they're physically rescued, yes, but spiritually, emotionally, mentally, their whole being is destroyed. You know, they have been groomed, forced, beaten, tortured, drugged, raped, who knows how many times, okay? And yes, this is hard to hear, but this is real. This is real. And this kid gets rescued, you know, especially if they're young and age, you know, but their whole identity, everything is completely stripped. And imagine what they're going through and thinking like, man, I'm trash, I'm garbage. I would imagine.
Well, I think you're making a good point, but I don't think that I think this transcends age, right?
Right.
Even if it's like a child or an adult.
Yes.
I mean, you like the amount of trauma that's happening there. It definitely transcends age. I don't think you know. Obviously, it's imprinted on a child. It's imprinted on anybody, but yeah, I agree that like
the disconnect.
yes.
Well, even
100%.
thinking about what you were mentioning earlier, like Fremont Street, right? It might be an older victim.
Yeah.
But you don't know how long they've been groomed for, right?
Right.
If that started childhood, it's really hard to break that.
Right.
'Cause that's all they
Absolutely.
know at that point. So I think it's important to remember that too. Just because they're an adult appear to be an adult doesn't mean that they are okay doing
Right.
it, right? Or
Right.
want to do it.
Right.
But if that's all they know, or how to survive, or they're still being coerced and forced,
Right.
and still in that trauma bond in a sense.
Yeah,
with
the
their-
trauma bond's a
yeah.
big deal.
Their nervous system has been completely destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're in fight or flight, and in this case, flight. You know, they're, gosh, it's very upsetting. You know, but so they get rescued. Okay, and people need to understand that's not the end of it. All right.
That's only the beginning.
That is the beginning, absolutely. That is the beginning, because now the long-term care begins. And that could be layers upon layers of trauma that someone's got to break down.
Yeah.
And then even with that being said, you get the trauma coaching. But that, for those of you who have not read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, that book is so accurate. These people, these victims, may potentially always, their bodies will keep the score. And so anyways, I just want to emphasize that if you want to be able to help in some way, that's an avenue too. You know, I need to figure out how to go about that. These organizations will know better than I do. But
real quick, when you say the body keeps the score, it's not like just physically, right? It's like mentally.
It's more like
right?
the actual trauma.
Yeah.
Trauma gets stored in, like, you got emotional and mental pain that actually gets stored in your physical
Oh, yeah.
being. In a
Oh,
sense.
yeah. I mean,
it's a very powerful.
Well,
book.
in paramedic school, you learn that, and in nursing, you learn that trauma or stress is, your body doesn't know if it's physical, mental, but it deals with stress the same way, no matter what type of stress it is. And just, that's like peak stress, right? So,
Yeah.
And imagine too, you know, here you are, a little child, and you are supposed to be protected by adults, but instead you are going through what they are going through. And then you're saying, what, is it me? Did I do something wrong? And then you get to the point to where now, like, they have you, they control you, and you're going to do what they say just to please them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, man, if there was a small child out there that heard this, you know, we're hearing all the other people speaking, I just hope they know that people are trying, you know, and that's our goal. You know, people need to try.
Absolutely.
So, man, there's this trauma is very dynamic. You can speak a ton
Right.
about the whole physiology and spiritual and you know, nervous system, etc. But I'll take too much time. So,
we do just real quick as far as like iEmpathize goes and some of the stuff that we're doing right now. We do have future trainings coming up.
that's right.
Yeah.
Listening.
So again, we're going to Florida. We're going to Ocala, Florida, Shelby, North Carolina, and Worcester, Ohio. And honestly, like I have the dates, but
Well, we can post it on the
yeah,
website too.
yeah, we can do that. That's awesome.
I wonder if there's a possibility to, get this message to first responders. You know, whether maybe we do a formal podcast again. Everyone's got a phone in their hand.
Yeah.
You know, hey, we can put down the sports game. We can put down Yellowstone for a minute. You know, you can always record, but you can't. You don't always get a chance to save someone's life.
Well, that's a good point. The good thing about the training that we have is we have a facilitator's guide. And so if you work for a fire department and you're the newest firefighter on the floor, or you're the most senior guy, and this strikes a chord with you, then reach out through the email or through iEmpathize. Send an email, and we will get this training to your fire department for the great cost of $0.00. Myself and a few of the guys that work with iEmpathize go out and we just, we go to conferences and stuff like that to raise money so we can give this to fire departments, ambulance providers, emergency rooms, police officers if they want it, at the cost of $0. We never want, finances to be a reason to not save a life. Right. That would just be a tragedy in itself, right? So we made some phenomenal contacts and partnerships at FDIC, and one of the organizations that we're working with out there actually decided to make it mandatory that all 500 of their employees are trained in child exploitation, human trafficking. So that's why we're going to Florida. That's why we're going to North Carolina. That's why we're going to Ohio. We're going to train all 500 of their employees. Not only that, we're doing it at a college that has a fire science program and an EMS program. So obviously those students get to come free of charge. Anybody at the school, we're going to try to give, this is my goal, is to give extra credit to anybody that comes, right? Or anything to get them through the door. Yeah. We've invited all the surrounding fire departments, all the fire departments from that state too. So if they send maybe their training chief or their training captain to come out and go through the training, and then they can bring it back to their departments. So
that's amazing.
The goal is to get, like I said, 5,000, at least 5,000 people.
It's gonna happen.
Let's do this. Let's 5,000. Hey. I challenge. I'm calling out fire departments right now.
100%.
Private ambulances, law enforcement. I understand.
Emergency room. Let's get emergency room.
Don't forget emergency rooms.
Law enforcement. They go through such hardships too. The things they got to see, and to ask if all these agencies are different type of entities to give more. The demand that we give is high already, and but. Like emergency rooms, right? And that's something that we're going to be talking about, how to be more informed, right? Yeah. People who are listening, hey, we got a job to do. Look, I'm not trying to pressure you or anything, but I think the idea and the ideology of saying, well, it's not my issue is weak, because it's not your family or kids. Why should I care? Is a weak mentality. Well,
I think you're hitting a great point right there. Let's talk about vulnerabilities, right? What means it? Tell me why it can't be your kid. Did your kid have a cell phone? Yes. Okay. There's a huge vulnerability. Traffickers are like AT&T. They will reach out and touch someone, right? That's their whole goal. That's all they do. That's their job. They don't go to work. That's their job. Are you a great parent? Are you engaged in your child's life? If not, they're vulnerable. Do you provide food, shelter, clothing? I mean, we're talking about the most basic needs covered, right? These people will cover those basic needs, but they're going to want something in return, right? So just because you live in a nice house in a nice neighborhood and the mall that you live by is really nice, they're there. They're searching for your children. They are everywhere. There's not one spot that they aren't at. And we know that. The Polaris Project did a heat map of the United States and where it's the worst. You know what I mean? And the fact of the matter is that in 50 states, it's in every single state. That's the deal. So it's not happening here, it's happening there. Right. And, we go to FDIC and we talk to all these firefighters and, we got this. Everybody loves to say we have this highway that's running through. And yeah, sure, there's people that are being trafficked on that highway, but it's also happening in your community. Yeah. And that's the thing is like the vulnerabilities are if you're not paying attention to your child, go home and give your kid a hug and a kiss and open up dialogue, talk about this. Yeah. And again, iEmpathize has a training that you can go through that will train your children. It'll train you. We basically we've covered all sectors. So that's kind of one of the great things that we have at our fingertips,
Right on. Is there anything else as we get ready to come to a close that you want to share?
No, man. I can't thank you enough for having me.
I was gonna say thank you.
Yeah, no,
thank you for all that you do, along with your people at iEmpathize.
Time out though. Like this is what it's all about. I met Mark in Colorado, and it was probably about 6 months later we had the training. Isaiah and I talked in January. 6 months later, we're doing this.
Crazy.
I mean, talk about like this is pretty phenomenal,
I truly believe everything happens for a reason. I say this all the time.
100%.
So.
And it's all God's timing, right? You weren't ready before,
and through stuff as well. Yeah. I was telling people like, hey, it's okay if you're not ready.
100%.
When, family issues, loss of a friend from suicide, to another friend, medical condition, and I was just not in the right headspace. I was angry.
Yeah.
I was being straight up. I'm not one thing for my audience as I lead this podcast and lead my business coming here soon is for one, I'm straight to the point. I don't lie. I ain't here to bullshit nobody. I ain't gonna sit here and sugarcoat stuff either. Yeah. And but with that being said, I come from a place of compassion and understanding.
Yeah.
And so that's why I personally am taking accountability of my failed inaction to make a difference in this realm.
Well, I think that, as a first responder, frontline worker, we've all been there. So we're not casting stones in a glass house. I think it's very important that we let people know, like, hey, we are not perfect. We've all made our mistakes, and but it is great to see, like I said, 6 months later, it was literally 6 months almost to the day that we, built the training from when I met Mark, and this is almost 6 months to the day that we put this together after you saw the training. So,
look at the impact you've had in such a short time, though. The
sky's the limit for you guys too.
From
So,
here. Oh, that's true.
And this is day one, not day one. This is
it's our first. So
this is the first podcast, but you guys have also been doing massive amounts of work on the backside, right? Getting your trauma coaching and doing everything that you need to be successful in that. So, it's a team effort, right? It's not me It's not you, it's us. So
That's true.
And initially, like I was saying earlier, that mental illness continues to devastate the first responder world. And that is something, the fact that suicides earlier this year nationwide, all the law enforcement,
Yeah.
hospitals, all the just the frontline workers, and that is not okay.
no.
You know, and I won't go on to a too long onto that, but I care. You know, we need to take care of our own. We are so good at always responding to everyone else's emergencies, but when it comes to our own, for one, we're not really taught how to deal with it, right?
Right.
And there are resources and everything, but imagine if leadership knew how to identify, how to facilitate, and full circle get that fireman, get that police officer, private ambulance back to where they are at their highest performance.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we deserve to go home to our families
Happy.
right?
Cured.
You know, how many times,
Yeah.
you know, I've talked to individuals, they go home and man, they're pissed off at their kids because they're so sleep deprived when we get off, and then their kids may do something that normally wouldn't irritate you, but bam, you're or fighting with the wife and the divorces and all this, dang, so. But I generally care about our brothers and sisters, and so that was another reason I wanted to get this podcast going, get my frontline trauma coaching going,
Yep.
to learn, have that education, that background, but also I am a leader, and a
100%.
leader is not going to let his people fall. And I'm one person, right? But I realize that I have more to give. We have more to give.
Well, like you
And
said, it's a us thing, and I think
Yeah.
the more of us there are,
Yep.
the more we can reach and the more
Yeah.
impact we can have. And even with that being said, that you were touching on the trauma that first responders, nurses, and just people at the front lines in general endure while they're trying to help others. I think it's equally important to take care of yourself to be able to help others, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, you weren't been ready 2 years. If everything had unfolded the way it did for you with the whole, you prayed, you kind of challenged God in that sense, and he showed you, had that been a year or two ago, he probably would have missed that opportunity, right? He
Right.
wouldn't even seen that as a sign, or perhaps even challenge God in that sense, because you were in a different headspace. And I always say, like, everything has a reason. I think, if you're not there yet, and it's okay, we all are on time, on our own time, in a sense,
Absolutely.
and if you can't give that extra, that's okay,
Hey,
but if you can, let's do it, Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else on your end?
Oh, I think.
Good.
No.
Okay. Well, I do want hospital staff to know that, hey, this is real as well.
Oh, for sure.
And it's not that you didn't, it's just more awareness, signs
Right.
to look for. This is going to take an effort on multiple fronts.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right now the enemy's winning. You're talking about 1 million, how many, 2 million you said? Hey,
2 million children.
Children only.
10
million
That's
slaves.
estimated.
So,
Yeah.
So
hey, that's
probably low.
So it's time
Not
for
too
the
many.
light to step up.
Yeah.
It's something real quick. I want people to, if they had a chance, to listen to Tim Ballard. He said, "You cannot fight darkness with darkness. You always have to be light." And that man is steps ahead of me, because I would have responded potentially emotional in darkness.
Well, I think one of the biggest lines in that, well, first I want to say, watch out emergency rooms, because Nurse Kalli's coming. But one of the lines in that movie that just stuck with me and hit me like Mike Tyson to the heart was God's children are not for sale.
That's right.
And
not for sale.
and that's where we're at, and that's why we're here.
Yeah.
So thanks again
great.
for having me.
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for your time. I understand your time is very valuable. Okay, but before we close, this podcast, like I said from earlier, this podcast comes from a place of love and compassion for people. And there's so many people out there struggling, and we're going to put out more content to help lead. All right, people need to hear these messages, because my whole goal with what I want to do is I want to take people who have just been through so much, may feel like they'll never amount to anything. You know, I can't do this, I can't do that. Their trauma's holding them back. And that is not true. You just need someone to help guide you, to help push you, to lead. Because just like Jocko Willink says, you know, a leader turns their followers into leaders, because I need people that I lead and guide to continue that mission and helping others. And so when you come together, amazing things can be accomplished. So we need more people to step up and rise up, because millions of people are dealing with so many other issues. You know, with that being said, let's grow, let's learn, let's get better. Okay? So wherever you are, thank you for watching this podcast. I just pray that God continues to bless you and your families. And once again, thank you for listening. I'm Isaiah Bo, and thank you for watching Empower the Pulse. God bless.